Okay, great. So first, let us just say thank you for inviting us and the opportunity to present this project. As was said, a secondary archive is the virtual platform for female artists from Eastern and Central Europe, as you may see on your screen now. And it was created by Katarzyna Kozyra Foundation, MeetFactory in Czech Republic, Björnsonova in Slovakia, and Easttopics in Hungary. Like I am as a co-operator of Katarzyna Kozyra Foundation, I just need to tell you a little pretext to this project. So our foundation was founded by the artist, female artist from Central and Eastern Europe. And she faced in her biography a couple of drastic problems connected with being a woman and being a woman from this specific region. So she founded the foundation, which aims to help women with the visibility in art field, and also aims to discover and rediscover the heritage and the presence of female artists. And we as foundation, during our history, faced a couple of problems which could be, shaped and could be some kind of small explanation of how this project appeared. So first thing, if you ever try to deal with the history of women artists in Central and Eastern Europe, you will probably sooner or later face the fact that the history made a funny trick to this region and to women of this region who in this situation are actually double excluded. So both of the mentioned subjects were forced by outside and inside will to fit to the standards to the Western world, which basically means that you need to cut out the part of your experience, the part of your own history, to be recognized and understood by Western society. And if we all know the political reasons and consequences of this situation, there is just a small prominent example of how it worked with the women artists. For example, there is a Polish artist whose name is Eva Parton, and in 1974 she made a performance called Change, and it was dedicated to the problem of the connection between women beauty and this woman, visibility and value in the art scene. And after this project, she made the plenty of other projects which could be for sure considered as feministic practice and feministic artworks. But for some reason, by professional art critics during 40 years, these projects wasn't named like this. So this project couldn't be called feministic just only because she, as a part of Eastern Bloc, had no connections to the community of feminist artists in Western world, which is why she didn't belong to, let's say, the tradition of feministic art, which is why she cannot do feministic art. And this is hilariously funny, but this is the truth. And another thing we are currently constantly facing is that is the lack of network and the simple cooperation between countries of this region, and the fact that female artists or artists at all simply doesn't know each other. And we want to invent this network or fake those connections, but we wanted to create a tool, let's say a brick in the wall, that would help people to simply find information about each other. But what is even more important, to help people and artists, of course, to get familiar with what artists, female artists, want to tell about themselves and their art. So this is like a small pretext of this project, and I want to give the stage to my colleague Agata, who took those problems and shaped the concept and the idea that stands behind of this archive. So Agata.
Yes, so basically, thank you, Asia, for this forward. So I came to this project a little bit later. I didn't invent the core idea of building the archive. However, the foundation was searching for someone who is dealing with some sort of organizational works in its own practice. What's actually interesting for me, and I think what's interesting for this project, is that the foundation decided to actually not work with curator, to be a curator of this project, but with me, and I am visual artist. And together with our team, we were trying to find a focus that is not only purely technical, as Asha said also, but we were trying to find some common narrative that will also that will also enable the reader of the project to focus on some specific issues of the so-called female art. So as we said already many times, the reason behind the reason behind building an archive that is focused purely on female art practices is because lack of such tools, first of all. But second of all, we wanted to also understand what feminism is in the context of our region, of the so-called second world, so post-Soviet countries and other European non-Western countries, as not only historically speaking, but also in the current discussion about the feminist practices. There is a strong emphasis of, I mean, that there was even today, we were speaking about that already, there is a strong emphasis of separating the narrative between North and South. And we believe that the Eastern Europe feminist practices has its own particular meaning. And with this archive, we were trying to figure out also what is this meaning, so yeah, in this context, we were also thinking of so-called woman's identity and what doesn't actually mean. So if we were trying to also change it, trace it, how it changed during the last 70 years. And the reason why we chosen to focus on this time period is because, as we all know, our countries were coming through the most important changes, the social political changes that basically structured our societies today. And while this is coming me to the next point. So basically why we all come from fairly similar historical background. I mean, Slovakia, Czech Republic, Hungary, and Poland, who were countries participating in the first edition of the project. we were trying to figure out what basically constitute the East and what this transformative change meant for our societies, and also for art, and also for the role of the female artists and females in general within our societies. The name secondary, well, actually, I will here I have a slide about the secondary, but actually I wanted to also mention that what we do is not really an archive, as in sensu stricto, historically speaking, because we are not precisely dealing with historical materials, but we ask actually artists to write statements for themselves, and about that we will speak in the second. But the word, I have to admit that the word secondary sparked a lot of controversies, and we were asked many times why we chosen to name this project like that. And the main controversy was that we basically kind of like minorizing ourselves as female practitioners by naming the project a secondary. However, I mean, of course, we think that the name is slightly bit controversial. However, I think it's good to basically to start any discussion, and that it sparks discussions. But there were two main components that led us to this name. First was we were inspired by the notion of second sex as introduced by Simone de Beauvoir. And we were trying to think, maybe not precisely to in the context of like second wave feminism, but mostly in the context of the role of female in females' reproductive rights, and the role of females as mothers, and and also what's the difference between female art practitioner and the male art practitioner, and how it also translates into the other social issues we face in our societies today. So, for example, also making the project was in case of Poland. We are both based in Poland with Asia. Was actually happening at the same time when, as the women's strike in Poland, that was that started because of intensifying abortion law in our country. And also we were thinking about the issue of the notion of the so-called second world, so the former post-Soviet countries, so like the non-West. However, we also aware of the fact that we are still Europe, and it's kind of like this semi-peripheral landscape here, and that we are neither East, neither West fully, but with the help of the artists who were invited to the project and their statements, we were trying to figure out basically what is the region of ours, and what are the commonalities, and what are differences, and why the reality looks like that. And I mentioned the word statement many times, as we agreed that we want to encourage artists to write themselves. So in a way, this is also not traditional approach to archiving materials, as there is no third party that's referring about a certain event or practice, but the artists are actually narrating their practices themselves. This is also like a very vague term, and we were actually not keen to specify it. We wanted the forum to remain as much open as possible, of course, given the technical adjustments of the website, which I will explain also a little bit later on. But also, yeah, we wanted to focus, which was our main reason why we decided for the statement, is that we the artist doesn't speak about the art itself, but the art in relation, the artistic practice in relation to what she is doing in everyday life. So as we understand that the private sphere is strictly related to the public and the political, and one influences another, that this kind of treatment of art practices as independent from one's life, it's problematic. And what was interesting for us is actually how to be a female artist, and how to be female artist influences every day, and how one's person everyday's life basically resonates in artistic practices. And now Asia will tell us a little bit more about the current stage of the project.
Yeah, so now we are like Secondary Archive is very, I would say, young project in compared to projects that were presented here before. We started it in 2019, and the first edition was released in almost 1 year ago in 2020. And now we are finalizing the second edition dedicated to the extension to Ukraine and Belarus. And we are doing it in together with the Artsvit Gallery in Ukraine and Goethe-Institut in Minsk, which already unfortunately doesn't exist because of the political issues in which are currently happening in Belarus, and pretty weird decisions of the local government. But anyway, and also this project is supported by House of Europe in Ukraine. And what is why I wanted to speak about this extension is because partly what Agata mentioned. So like we are of course not we are not trying to tell that Central and Eastern Europe is something different from Europe itself. We just want to make to make wider the narration, to make it more variable and more complicated, because every time when you are adding something new, you are actually questioning the legacy of the general narration. And I think that this is a very interesting, and I think that this is the way to make this field and this, let's say, history that we all know more realistic and more truthful, and in this way maybe more useful to each and every who is in touch with it. So so by adding Ukraine and Belarus to the existing archive, it wasn't only mean for us to add another 70 statements of female artists. It was actually about how to add 2 new experiences, 2 new world visions to something which is already existing. And what I really like about this project is that we created the frame that not cut the present situation in each and every different context to which we put this frame. We actually, this frame is so reshapeable, so adjustable to the new context that we can, with this let's say, approach, concept, whatever, that was created, we are able to adjust it to the needs of new stories. And so let me just tell you a couple of examples how we did it. So I called it Ukraine and Belarus adjustment of the methodology. And like the first thing that we need to know about these two countries is that this is the different time and place. And that means that that we need to look for what actually happened then and there, but not to look for what's supposed to happen there. And this might sound stupid, but you remember the example of Eva Partum I mentioned in the beginning. So just as these Eastern, mysterious Eastern world cannot be measured with the ruler of the Western experience, the same picture is here. We cannot measure, we cannot fit different histories to the one standards, which is again work on to the improvement of those standards. So what is important is to mention that because those countries, Ukraine and Belarus, were part of Soviet Union and was not independent and was, let's say, the I hope I would not harm anyone with these words, the peripheric part of something which is in common mind is Russia. I mean, like Soviet Union means Russian. This means that those countries had very specific and super different system of art and of basically of art, and also of the existence of women in this art system. It's not only different lexicon of art, for example, the simple division between fine arts, performing arts, and so on didn't exist there and doesn't exist there still. But it also means that, for example, form was the form and the experiment was dictated by what was allowed it or not allowed it by political situation. So here are like two super small samples of the works by two brilliant artists. One is from Ukraine, and you can see it. Here is the work of Alla Horska called Victory Flag, and this is pretty huge mosaic panel. And the next work is two small ceramic pieces by Tamara Sokolova from Minsk. So those works actually were considered as very experimental, and as if I may say so, non-conformistic. This means that artists were forced to invent for themselves the legal way for experiment in situation when everything from the brush till the oven for clay was the property of government. And so these two works are the samples. For example, Tamara Sokolova was interested in experiments in form, so she decided to become a student of arts and craft department in the Academy of Arts in Minsk, only because this was the most free place in the whole academy, only because by political system, something as craft wasn't considered as literally important. So this was like the free gap for someone who wanted to be an artist to actually be an artist and to have those materials for production, to have the oven, to have different types of clay, to have the future work, because in future she, after academy, she worked on the artistic factory, where she again had the access to all the materials, and she was able to make money because of the orders, because she was producing some, I don't know, cups, plates, vases, whatever, in her free time she was making her artistic experiments. And for example, Alla Horska, can you show the slide before? Yeah, and for example, Alla Horska, not telling the whole history of this artist, but anyway, she was able to make her artistic experiments working in monumental art, where this freedom of form was dictated by material. So like with this material, with such material as mosaics, you cannot work in let's say common tradition of socialistic art. So this material forced and helped and give the freedom to artists to experiment. And like just those, and again, just because she was an artist who was born in Ukraine, what is more important, she was born in the east of Ukraine, so in like in the periphery of the periphery. You can find her works only in such small places. For example, this work is not transportable. I mean, like this is the mosaic panel made in the wall in very small museum in Krasnodon in the Luhansk district in Ukraine. So like I'm trying to at the same time show these creative possibilities that system gave to people who were only really very creative, and in inventing those like gaps. And at the same time, this is the story of the division and actually of the lack of any normal possible ways to create an art. And again, the same hierarchic, very let's say tough system of art was the reason why there were no I don't know, public art or performing art or I don't know, yeah, any forms of art that you are probably thinking about when you're thinking about 20th century in this history. Okay, let's move on. Yes, and it's like I'm explaining, I don't want to focus on artistic statements because I don't want to comment them. I think that it is much more useful for people just to read it and to understand. So what I can explain is the curatorial approach that we choose in this extension. So of course, leading this idea of the adjustment, we adjusted the subject of our search. For example, because of the very complicated political situation after the okay, first tricky thing is to change 1989 to 1981 because this is the difference, because in Soviet Union, unfortunately, okay, for these two countries, unfortunately, 1989 didn't have any influence, and in further extensions we also want to adjust this let's say Rubicon date that we put between generations to the history of those countries. So this is why their other dates could be invented, and it is also important to explain, for example, the absence of almost total absence of feministic practices and feministic artworks in 90s, and it was actually very rude, and female artists would find it offensive if someone would call them female artists, because they articulated themselves as artists, and this was very important. What we as well as there were no social or political art or comments in the art of 90s in this country, simply because simply because it was like the attempt to first invent the language of art. It was attempt to break free this connection between art and politics, as art as propaganda, and like as well. There are a lot of differences that I can explain, but let's just simply move on. So like the solutions that we found, next slide, please. So like the basic solution that we found is that for me, this is one of the most important things in this project, is that we really want work with local society, with local communities, and with local artists, and with local art professionals. And for example, in these extensions, in this extension, there were like a very basic thing to create an art list, of the list of artists who will be in the archive. And of course it's gonna be, it should be, and it will be very controversial thing. So each curatorial team from each country just focused on the problematic issue of the current time, and these actually focus the perspective they want to build for this narration of the art history of their countries. So for example, this is why Belarus were focused on searching for the artists who let's say kick-started the art movements or founded formal or informal, it doesn't really matter, art schools. So like they were searching for female artists who influenced other artists. And this is because in this country, the stage of the critical, curatorial, whatever thinking is that they are trying to invent their own narration. In Ukraine, there was the opposite thing. They were focused on bright personalities. They were focused to describe any possible important ways of and shades of art that was created by women. And the idea that stands after it is that in Ukraine, they're trying to appropriate their own history from this decolonize the history of its own country and invent the heroes they can write in this history. Yeah. So, and also there are a bunch of issues, like, I don't know, for example, the problem of migration or whatever. So we decided to translate the statements to the if, for example, artist leaves in country, in the other country, we also decided to translate the statement to the country where this artist lives, and vice versa. If someone, for example, live in Poland, his statement from Polish language will be translated to the native language, which will, we hope at least, help these artists to be more articulated in the countries they belong to and at the same time they're living in. Yep. And now Agata will tell more about how we are making these statements and actually how this platform works.
Yes, so coming back to the basics, basically, my role in the project was not only to work with the first edition, under the first edition of the archive, but also to basically kind of come to the idea how the website should look like. And I have to say that it was a very difficult task, mostly because we had in mind that I'm sure that most of you who are speaking today are dealing with similar problems. So it's hard to design a tool platform that is basically in the ongoing development, and there is no settled content yet. So that's why the website we came with looks perhaps a little bit basic and simple, but that was the idea that will allow us to develop in the future. So obviously the most important feature of the website is the index of artists. At the moment we have 245 statements, and the next are coming. The next edition is coming in few months. As you can see in up, you can. We had to find some kind of navigation tool. As I said already, we didn't want to, we not even didn't want to, but we couldn't navigate through countries, given that we might develop and we want to develop in the further regions in the future. By countries only. So that's why we also came with this this idea of we call it generation, but it's also not very strict. Sorry, it's not very strict. It's not very strict division, because we didn't, like, the reason we did that is not to measure someone's date of birth and to put them in the right category, but we were thinking also in the context of what I said, of like trying to find the narrative for the region. We were thinking about how those different decades of Soviet time periods and of the after 1989 or 1991 shaped also the role of the artist and the way female artists work. So these generations are more connected to when a person started to work. So we distinguished 3 generations in this archive, but I would show you that in a couple of slides. So this is basically how the statement, the artist profile looked like. We decided to go for the portrait photo of each artist as well. And as you can see on the site, you have also categories. And this, as already someone was mentioning before in your presentations today, that you were trying to build a tool that will allow artists to network, and that was actually that's the idea of that we developed as well. So those tags were supposed to help artists and curators and other possible collaborators in the future to connect with each other. We hear that it's working, and so yeah, you can basically check out who is dealing with similar issues, and learn about your colleagues from neighboring countries, which we don't know at all, because in art schools we learn about Western art history. So this is how the tags look. How the selection of tags look. You can also mix and match them. And yeah, the generation tag. So as you can see, here is the 80s to 2000 is the youngest generation, as we call it. But basically, we distinguish three generations, as I said already. One is those artists who were start to work in 60s, 70s. We call it new avant-garde generation, or not only started to work, but they practice was already developed by then. Then we have artists who were working, who start to work in 70s, 80s, and those who were born after 1989 or 1991. And we decided to choose 3 different colors for each generation, and they also influence the user experience of the website. So it's still monotone, but you can see that basically that the website changed after, depending on which artist the viewer was searching before. We wanted to obviously focus on the text and on this text that was written by artists, but this was also a difficult task. We actually ran many tests of how to make it in the best way possible, because not every artist is writing. Some of the artists, they cannot write for themselves. As Asia mentioned already before, the language was also an issue of which language we should show the work. We decided to obviously publish a short biogram of each artist for the historical purpose, but the statement was supposed to be a text that is written in a very specific moment of time, and we were actually very specific to the artist, saying that it's not testimony, it's not the final word of theirs. It's supposed to be reflecting on what they're doing right now and how they feel about their own role as an artist within the society and politics right now. So yeah, as you can see, there are also some pictures appearing on the website as a footnote. Again, that gesture is supposed to put the focus on the text itself. However, we're dealing here with mostly visual art and performance art. So some visual materials are sometimes necessary to understand the specifics of the project. So you can see the footnotes are also appearing on the site, and the photo can be seen in full color. And we decided, aside the statements, we also decided to so the statements are very different from each other, because as I said, we didn't want to clarify the format too much, but also because you know, every person has their own view on what the statement should be, and obviously the result is is very different. Each statement is very different. But we wanted to also introduce this kind of more theoretical section, which we called feed. And these essays that we published there, they are commissioned by us, written by curators who are collaborating with us. And they are problematizing more trans-geographical problems. So here we actually have Denisa Tomkova, who is working on the aspects of Roma identity within these 4 countries and Central and Eastern Europe in general. We, as you can see on the end, we also, this particular statement, it has been written by the artist, but we also invited curators to collaborate with artists. As I said, we faced the problem that many artists were scared to write by themselves. We wanted to have someone who is kind of like in their team and not and kind of helping them reflect while writing. Therefore, each artist who voiced this need was also paired with a curator and editor who were helping them to write the contribution. What's important also, the number of artists was limited, of course, due time. However, we want to develop this, but also due financial aspect, as we wanted to pay each contributors for working with us. Yeah, so I highly encourage you, of course, to go through the website on your own. And just to not prolong for very long, Asia will just add a couple of words about the future plans. And from my side, I thank you for your attention, and I give my voice to Asia.
Okay, so I just wanted to add that probably in February there will be like an online conference with the result of this second edition I was mentioning. We will also present 3 theoretical essays about written by curators, basically all around the idea Agata mentioned before, and we will add 17 new artist profiles to these archive. And also in future, in the next year, we already planned for ourselves the extension to Kosovo, Albania and Serbia, and further development of the 4 content of these archives. So we really highly encourage you to visit it. It is very easy to find online because the last slide is secondaryarchive.org. And this is it from us.
Thank you so much.